Alright, in this video we are going to be designing a scrolling background. So I'm going to start with the rectangle tool and I'm going to just create a box that's going to be the portion for my sky. Doesn't matter the color because we're going to click on the paint bucket tool and go into the palettes and change the solid color to a linear gradient. Then I can double click one of these boxes and choose what do I want my color to be for the darkest color of my sky, and then choose a lighter color for the lighter portion of the sky. And then just click and drag a line that goes up so that the direction you point is where it's going to have the darker pieces of your color. Now I'm going to use the brush tool and I'm going to brush in just a couple stars. So I'm just going to click once and then I'm going to convert that to a symbol and call it star. Oops, and I meant to actually, yep, nope, that'll work. I'm going to use this to put on my sky. Now what you'll notice, if I hold the Alt button, click and drag, I can make more copies, but they're a little bit large. So what I want to do first off is change these properties to be just 2 pixels by 2 pixels. And then holding the Alt button, you can go and shift or you can go and move these stars throughout your sky. You have a little bit more control over it this way. Even make some constellations if you want. Something like the Big Dipper there. Okay, then I'm going to also go and I'm going to use the oval tool, and in the pasteboard area I'm going to draw out an oval, use a bit more of an orangey color for my sun, and I'm going to convert this to a symbol as well. However, this time I want it to be a movie clip so that I can add some filters to it. So in the filters down at the bottom here, I'm going to first of all add a blur filter, and I'm going to change this to be 25 by 25. So it gives it that nice blur. And then I'm also going to add in a glow. So I'm going to add what color sort of I want my ring to glow around my sun. And then I can position it onto my stage. Now what I want to do is I want to select all of that and convert it to a symbol. And we're going to call it sky, and I'm going to just go back to a graphic and distribute that to the layers. Click on layer 1 and we're going to add in some mountains. So this time I'm going to choose a darker color, and I'm going to use the brush tool here, and I'm just going to brush in some mountains. Now I want these to go out fairly great distance because I want to be, when I create my scrolling movements, I need more space. So first of all, I'm going to right click anywhere in the pasteboard area and click on rulers. And I want to see how far I can get here. So I'm going to go out to this 1250 mark with my mountains. Okay, and now I'm just going to zoom back out and finish these off. In fact, what I think I'm going to do with that ruler, we might even go, let's go, no, I think I'll just use a straight edge here, carry that out, and then now I should be able to use my paint bucket tool and fill that in. Okay, so we're going to select, double clicks to select all of that, convert that to a symbol, call it mountains, it's graphic as well, and distribute that to your layers. Alright, so before we start the ground, make sure we click on layer 1. Now we'll use a rectangle tool and we'll draw that out again. We'll draw our ground. And now I'm also going to use the paintbrush tool. I'm going to change my color. And I'm just going to draw out some sort of sand pile things. Get one there. And fill that in. Ooh, that's green. Don't like that one. I'm going to go up here. Solid color. We'll go with that. Alright, so I'm going to select all of that and position it on my canvas. It's a little bit large, so I'm just going to use the transform tool and shrink it down some. And then I'm going to add in, let's just click off of that for now. I'm going to add in a little bit of dirt onto my ground. So using the paint or the brush tool, I'm just going to add a couple specks of dirt. And I think I'll draw one more of those mounds. So I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool, oops, to select that color so that I can brush out another one. Not taking too much time on my backdrop just because the point of this is to learn how to create that scrolling feature. So I'll just sample that color, fill that in, select all of that, move it onto my scene, use the free transform tool, and size it up. Once you've placed it, you won't be able to move it again if it's because it'll take away from your scene and you'll have to do some editing. So make sure it is what you want before you place it, otherwise you may have to undo ahead of time. Okay, so now that I have both of those in there, I'm just going to make sure that I've selected all of it. Holding the shift button down, I'm going to make sure that I select all the other stuff as well, including the ground. Double click to get all of those little gravel markings as well. And then right click, convert it to a symbol. We can call this one the ground. Graphic is fine, I'm not adding any filters. And then distribute that to the layers. You can always go into your library just to preview that you had everything there. Alright, click on layer 1. We're going to add in one more thing. So using the brush tool, this time I'm going to be adding in some grass and some cactus. So I'm just going to brush in, I don't like that color. Let's use a darker color. Okay, so I'm just going to brush in where I want to put this layer. And again, it doesn't matter if you go outside your boundaries, because your video will only show what's on the canvas. So fill that in. I'm now going to use a green, and I'm going to use the brush tool again, and I'm just going to brush in some grass. Now you could save yourself some time if I was to brush in just a couple strokes of grass down here. I could select it, convert it to a symbol, grass, and now just like I did with the stars, I can just drag out copies. I'm just going to shrink it down. It's a little bit big for grass. So now holding the Alt button, I can just kind of drag them out until I've got enough grass. So it's a little bit time saver that way. May start to look a little bit like a pattern, but you can always go in, and if you want to modify, you can always flip some horizontally just to change the look of it, or resize it, or add in some new grass. You even have two different symbols for your grass. So I might, just to avoid too much of it being looking similar, add in a couple extra pieces randomly. Then I'm also going to draw in a cactus. So I'm going to draw that off to the side, and then I'll position it the same way I did my columns of anthills or whatever they are. So I'm going to use that. I actually like that color for the inside, maybe. So let's draw a cactus. And then I can add some lines. And let's just fill that in with a lighter color. Ooh, that's really lime green, maybe not quite so bright. Oh, it's the same color. About darker. So about something like that. And now let's select all of that and position it over. Again, it's way too big, so let's transform it. Bring it down smaller. And I'm going to hold the Alt button, and I'm going to drag another one out so I don't have to redraw it. And again, I'll just make it bigger, and I'll flip it horizontally again so it looks a little different. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to, holding my Shift button down, make sure that I've selected everything from the other cactus, including all of the floor and the grass symbols. So I need to get everything. So double clicking, oops, now I've gone into that symbol. That's the only problem. When you do it as a symbol, they will go into it. Let's see if I can double click. get all of that, get all that grass. And now I just need to try to get all those grass pieces. I'm going to zoom in on this area here because I feel like I missed something there. Okay, let's see if we've got it all. So let's right click, convert it to a symbol. This one we'll call our cactus and grass. Just gonna check it over here. So something definitely happened with my ground here. So I didn't get all of that. So let's zoom in there again. Oops, on there. All right, well, let's just put it back to a symbol and see what happens with that. Okay, now we're going to need some frames. So we're going to go out to about maybe 400 might be enough. That's probably even more than enough. Let's do half that. Let's go 220. Let's drag a bunch of frames there, and we'll right click and go to insert frame. And now we'll start with, we want to make sure, oops, where'd I go? Yep, our scrubber's at the end. So I've got the sky, the mountains, the ground. Oh, I did not distribute that last bit to the layers. There. Excuse me. And I did it more times than I needed. Okay. So starting with the ground, let's be at the end of that one. Holding the shift button, I want you to click and drag that ground all the way until it lines up to the right edge of your canvas. Now on the mountains layer, we're going to right click, create a motion tween on that one. The mountains won't be moving as fast, so holding this shift, we're just going to click and drag those just a little bit. Oh, and you'll notice here that I did it, no, I wasn't, my scrubber wasn't quite at the end, so I'm just going to undo that. Make sure that your scrubber is at the very end. So let's create a motion tween and just holding the shift, drag those a little bit there. All right, now, oh, I didn't make a motion tween on my ground either. So I'm just going to pull that back for a second. So I need to make sure that I'm at the end. Let's just restart that part. Okay, so now what we're going to do, making sure your scrubber's at the end, you're going to right click and create a motion tween, and then holding the shift button, you're going to drag your ground layer till that the right side lines up with the edge of your canvas. Now click on the mountains layer And same thing, we're going to create a motion tween. Make sure your scrubber's at the end. Holding the shift, we're going to drag those just a little bit. Mountains don't move as fast, so we don't need to move them as much. Now with the cactus and ground layer, we're going to right click, create a motion tween. Holding the shift button, we're going to be moving that a little bit. That will move about half that distance, so maybe somewhere in there. The sky is not going to be moving, so I don't need to do a motion tween with that unless your goal was to have your sunset come down or something like that with modifying that motion tween somehow. So let's test that movie now and see how that looks. So aside from I messed up a little bit on the ground there, we can see the mountains aren't moving very fast, and it's just cycling through. So that's how you can create a scrolling background. You could try maybe changing the scenery if you want to do a cityscape, have a car going through with buildings in the background. You could do a nested animation in the wheels to make it look like it's driving along a street. So yeah, I hope you were able to learn a little something. Designing the background is probably the longest part, then creating those motion tweens really is quite fast. So happy animating!